The Far Cry series grew by quite a lot after its third installment, featuring the beloved character Voss and his ramblings about the definition of insanity. It was a very successful launch and has sparked numerous spin-offs and sequels. But what about the predecessors? Sure, the second game in the series has gotten a kind of cult following, as its unconventional gameplay depicting gritty civil war in Africa has been appreciated for its unique style. Though, I want to go even further back. Back to a game released in 2004 under another company and engine. A game which seems to me, at least, to have been forgotten. I want to dive into its design, history, and how its various concepts are traced into the sequels. Because when I finally finished this game last summer, I had a blast playing it. Keep in mind, it's completely fine to watch the video if you never play the game, as it's sort of tailored to those type of people. It's an old game anyway, so I don't expect anyone to start playing it now. So without further ado, here's my own retrospective on the original Far Cry. Please, enjoy.
Looking for the girl. You need reinforcements for one damn guy? Look, whatever's happening there, it can't be as bad as what's happening here. That's all you're getting. Deal with it.
I'm the guy who's going to tell you how to survive.
By the way, name's Jack Carver.
Get him. Hang on. Did you hear that some guy is loose on the island? Some intruder? He is medium height and build, and is wearing a red Hawaiian shirt. He is armed and dangerous.
This game is chaos. Almost everything wants to kill you, ranging from weird creatures to humans to helicopters. Your plans will fail, you will have to improvise, in contrast to the moments where you get to be a bit stealthy. And this all pays off in this great action experience. On top of this gameplay, its bad cheesy writing adds so much to it, even the game itself acknowledges it.
Let's prep the nuke, and then we can go grab the serum.
What is this? A bad spy movie?
So yeah, there's a lot to like about this game, and there's a lot to talk about this game, I feel like. So, what is the premise then? You're playing as Jack Carver, funny guy in red Hawaii shirt.
He's also the main villain in Far Cry 2.
And you are escorting this CIA agent by the name of Valerie to an island filled with mercenaries led by a guy named Krieger. And Krieger's like mad scientist, Yarhar, bad guy. So your ship gets shot down and you're now stranded a far cry away from home, basically. The game is then split into 20 different levels, where each level has a very open-ended goal, and it's just like, get from point A to point B, and the way you do it is up to you, basically, for the most part. The game's also pretty difficult. There's no quick saving, and you die pretty quickly, even on medium difficulty. Against all odds, Jack Carver survived the mercenary attack and is now stuck inside the tutorial level. Luckily for him, it's pretty easy to get out. All he needs to learn is the movement controls, such as crouching, jumping, and going prone. You also get this small glimpse of the outside world. It feels like a nice tropical paradise, but we all know that's just a guise for what's to come. A bit after,
Listen, dirtbag! Keep an eye out for some punk in a red Hawaiian shirt!
Jack listens in into our conversation. This introduces us to the mercenaries of the island, as well as their colonel, known as Crow. He's memorable because he, wears a hat, I guess. The characters in this game is a bit lackluster, sadly. Though I still find Crow entertaining when he shouts at his subordinates.
Am I understood?
Yes, yes, sir.
Hello? I know you're there. I've been tracking you since you and Val arrived.
Who are you?
I'm the guy who's going to tell you how to survive. Call me Doyle.
How do I know I can trust you?
Well, for starters, how about the fact that I haven't turned you in?
Good point.
Then you meet this mysterious phone guy that is gonna be your guide for basically the entire game. He's acting a bit secretive, but his name is Harvard Doyle, and we'll find out more about him later in the game. Besides, it's not like Jack has any other allies to work with. And then, with a pistol in hand, you're let out into the free world.
Stay low and avoid contact if possible. You don't really want to alert the guards.
For being released in 2004, the gunplay is pretty satisfying even to this day, especially with the ragdolling mercenaries tend to do when you shot. Moving on, within one of the houses you can find the most common weapon, the M4. This teaches players already early on that exploring will reward you with better gear, which is gonna be vital to survive out there, because you don't regenerate health and you don't have infinite ammo. Going up the hill to a hut, you acquire probably what can be considered the best tool in the entire game.
Use your binoculars to survey the surroundings. Notice that they have a sound enhancer and movement tracker. Dr. Krieger has fitted everyone on the island with locator signals.
Alright, you lazy SOBs! Search every inch of this damn island! Let's figure out what the hell is going on!
Receiving these powerful binoculars early is good, as it helps familiarize the player from scouting enemies to planning out their approach in any given situation. That's still part of the core gameplay in all Far Cry titles. From this hut with the binoculars, it's obvious that the game has been designed for the player to consider which path to take. There's a tower further out from the camp that might be a better approach rather than directly attacking. But no matter which tactical choice you make, there's a risk that one of the guards will run away to trigger the alarm. This dynamic AI is another great first impression, as now a helicopter of reinforcements arrive.
I think they may be keeping Val in the old carrier refueling station. You're going to have to check it out up close, I'm afraid.
In any case, after clearing the camp, you acquire your first vehicle, a buggy with a machine gun on top, with the goal of reaching an old carrier to find any potential whereabouts of Valerie, the woman that Jack Harbour was escorting to the Isles. Interestingly, the game follows a much more different level design. This Far Cry is the only one to not be open world within the series. Instead, most levels are generally about going from point A to point B, and how you do that is very much up to you. There aren't that many scripted enemy spawns or invisible walls preventing you from moving somewhere. In fact, you can technically skip every mission marker, including grabbing the binoculars and the car, and head straight to the carrier. There's even the possibility to go up this very steep hill, which is not really intended but possible, find a reinforcement helicopter on standby, kill the mercs here, then have the alarm trigger without any helicopter arriving. Though you will never do this unless very deliberately. However, I really do appreciate this lack of handholding. The game trusts you enough to figure out things by yourself a lot. It does, however, come with some flaws, as players that are new to the FPS genre will probably struggle. One of these issues is being taught how to use grenades. Take a look and notice the subtlety of this information.
My reports say you're in a red shirt. I suggest you grab some body armor and cover it, or you'll be easily spotted.
It's shown as a small note here when you play, but this information is so easy to miss, especially if you consider the fact that you're picking up your first pistol, you're listening to exposition dialogue, and learning how to reload. For me personally, this worked out really well, because I was already aware of all the mechanics, but it's still gonna alienate people that are not. In that sense, if you also consider that the first tutorial level features quite a lot of enemies, it's got a very dynamic mission length. Some players will rush through the level quick and easy, some others would probably take a lot longer as they learn how the game is played through trial and error. It's kinda funny how the next level is actually much more straightforward because of its linear design. The second level takes place in a rusty carrier from the World War, so most of the fighting is gonna be close quarters. You also get introduced to a futuristic version of the P90, and you get taught on how to play with verticality in mind. There's this one infamous spot where I died at least 5 times because I couldn't figure out where this merc was shooting me at from.
Probably 10 times more.
Turns out he was looking from above.
Before I actually figured out that he was above me.
No sign of Val herself, but I found her camera. There's also a file here on some joker named Krieger.
I'm a gamer, and we live in a society.
Dr. Krieger used to work for the United States Department of Defense until he was kicked out for having unethical research.
But a measure of the future of mankind depends on the success of my research here. I will not fail my destiny.
Far Cry series is known for their great villain monologues, but Krieger, he's kinda boring. Very cheesy stuff. He basically says, "My research on this island will be vital for humankind. Bye bye."
Doyle, they're taking Val to somewhere called the Bunker. Where's that?
I know where that is, but it's heavily guarded. Get a boat and I'll meet you.
I'm on my way.
After leaving the carrier, Doyle comes up with the idea to blow up the satellite dish in order to disrupt communications. He tells Jack that this is gonna help him and Valerie escape the islands later on. And with Jack having no better ideas himself, he follows this task blindly. This map lets you use boats, find alternative paths to reach your goal easier, as well as snipers. This level was actually heavily promoted as the demo before Far Cry was released, and it is a very well crafted level showing off a lot of the things Far Cry has to offer. With that, I really want to comment that Far Cry was very impressive from a technical standpoint back in 2004. The game was actually built upon a dinosaur education program, but the engine back then was so impressive they got funding to create a first-person shooter within it, hence the birth of Far Cry.
Nice job, team.
Though today it's the modern day, so I personally have a standard of judging a game on how it feels to play now, and not how it felt back then. And thus I will not give any excuses if it suffers from outdated mechanics. If something was impressive back then, it does not automatically make any good when you play it today. Still, I find the visuals not too bad even when compared to the modern eye. There are plenty of great games released recently that lack top tier graphics, though I think the user interface of Far Cry is noticeably ugly. The AI in this game does have a dynamic dialogue system though.
Shark hunting, huh? You gonna eat shark?
Nah, I'm gonna pull the jaws out in mountain. It's gonna look cool.
I tell you what, it'd be better if you caught something we could eat. Me, I ain't eating no damn shark.
What's wrong with shark?
Don't you know what the sharks around here have been eating? Where do you think all of Krieger's failed experiments go?
Dude, that's just wrong.
The dialogue writing and the voice acting is so bad, but I still can't stop loving it for some reason. After climbing up some hills and reaching the satellite dish, you get to hold out against waves of enemies that will come through with helicopters. This segment really pushes you into a corner, as you have to survive while Doyle is hacking a door so you can continue further, and there's a lot of enemies around. Luckily, on your side, you have a rocket launcher. With entrance to the satellite dish control rooms, Jack witnesses a conversation between a mercenary and Krieger.
Are somewhat unstable. I am concerned they may become difficult to control. I have taken the precaution of using my own DNA as a carrier for the strain. Then, I should be able to control them.
He finds some explosives and blows the shit out of the place. What Jack is unaware of, though, is that this might lead to some big consequences later on in the game. But hey, look, a hang glider! So after blowing up the satellite dish, Doyle has agreed to meet up with Jack at a specific pier. Of course, you have to kill every mercenary so that Doyle's cover is not blown. So in the last level, there's a chance you can find a sniper rifle. But in this level is when you really get to use it. And it is powerful. Seriously.
You must be Jack.
How did you know that?
I've been expecting you.
Finally you meet Doyle in person. Like a true Chad, he wears the lab coat outside of the lab. And then he just picks up his bitch Jack and takes him over to the next level. Doyle is taking Jack to a place nicknamed The Bunker, because apparently that's where Valerie might be. The sun is also set, meaning that Doyle probably drew around on that boat for a long time with Jack. What the fuck was he doing? In any case, the tone shift to an orange hue adds a nice mood change, considering it's a bit more of a stealth level. Oh, and Doyle didn't take you to the bunker, he just took you to the island where the bunker is located at. So, you have to do all the dirty work to get there.
Would have spotted us. You'll have better luck cutting through the research facilities.
What kind of research?
I can't talk about that now. Just keep an eye out for anything moving. And if you see anything that looks dangerous, well, it is.
The start of this level is interesting because it actually forces the player into thinking strategically. The first thing you notice is that there's a shitload of enemies already. However, with careful examination, you can also find a good overlook of them, as well as a mounted gun. This will intrigue the player to move over there, whilst trying to dodge any patrols on the way. And if you do get busted, like I did, you can always make a run for it and hope for the best. I managed to reach the overlook, used the mounted gun, completely decimated all of them. The next area you'll go into is the cave. You can also hear a mercenary talking to the radio with Crow.
Do you need reinforcements for one damn guy? Look, whatever's happening there, it can't be as bad as what's happening here. That's all you're getting. Deal with it.
At this level, you're introduced to the silenced MP5. Mind you, it is the only silenced gun in the game, and with careful usage, it can be very handy. But how does stealth work in this game? So, you have a detection meter, and the higher it goes, the closer you are to being spotted, and at its peak, you're being attacked. The AI then has different states of alertness. If they find a dead colleague or have spotted you before, they will remain in an alert state. This effect spreads like a domino. If one mercenary sees another one on high alert, they will also do the same thing. Once they're looking for you, they're more perceptive and quicker on the trigger finger. On top of that, at some parts of the game, when one mercenary has been alerted, there will be additional reinforcements arriving. This means in general, once an outpost has been alerted, you will switch to loud. Enemies also spot you pretty easily, even at a distance. I mean, Jack Harbour is wearing a bright red shirt while he's out in this jungle, so it kinda makes sense. You can counter this by hiding in foliage at the cost of moving around as freely. Keep in mind, to enjoy stealth in this game, do not play on patch 1.4, the default Steam version, as that patch ruins some parts of the AI and their ability to see you. They can shoot you through certain walls on that patch. It can sadly turn people away from the game without even knowing that it's not the way it's supposed to be played. Stupid bugs. Stealthing is then basically very effective at taking out singular enemies or patrols, so that you can get into a more advantageous position before you face the actual challenge. I like this approach because it makes stealth a very good tool, but not so strong that it overshadows going loud. Something that tends to happen in later titles. I'm looking at you, silenced sniper rifle. A flaw with the stealth system though is its sound sensitivity. If you accidentally walk standing up for just a millisecond, plenty of mercs nearby might start investigating. Even when crouching, there's an issue with them still hearing you. This is very notable in tighter levels. You're also provided with an infinite supply of rock throwing, but I rarely found usage for them, since making enemies look another direction won't help if they turn around whenever you attempt to walk. The game also has no takedown mechanic, as we often see in modern titles, and even attempting a stealth kill with the machete can be very risky and clunky. If you're gonna stealth in this game, you'll have to use the silenced MP5. Speaking of which, I'm actually appreciative that it's the only weapon that can stealth, as the fact that it's a submachine gun means it doesn't have the best damage output. Later on in the game, when enemies will start wearing helmets, you cannot even insta-headshot them. But it's still possible to take them out without raising an alarm, by simply now bursting bullets into the head. This increases the skill gap slightly for stealth later on, whilst playing loud does not turn into a bullet sponge as much as it could, as you will acquire better rifles for loud but not a better weapon for stealth. I mean, otherwise, you might end up operating only with the silenced MP5, assassinating merc to merc without even giving them a chance to counteract. Super short intermission here. This is my first actual video. Well, not technically, it's just not something that's not a shitpost. It is a personal project that I wanted to create for myself, but then again, it is really fun when other people do interact with it and see it, of course. Can't deny that. And there's this really cringe thing where you should ask the viewer to like the video if they're enjoying it, so I'm basically doing that right here. It'll make my day a little bit happier if you want to. Enough time wasting, let's go.
This place is total chaos.
I suspect by destroying the comm center, you caused mayhem throughout all the islands. The Trigens must have taken this opportunity to escape. Fascinating.
The 6th level, also known as Treehouse, is hands down one of my favorite levels in the entire game. Up till this point, it's been quite the colorful environment. Now though, you roam around in this dark facility. You find dead mercenaries that have been killed by something other than you. And the survivors you do find, well... From a modern perspective, the horror can look a little silly and outdated, but I still thoroughly enjoy the change of atmosphere. And with the game's low field of view, it does add another layer of paranoia to the player. Eventually you exit this building and reach the outside. Immediately the lighting has changed drastically from the previous parts of the game. It feels dirty and unwelcome. Treehouse is perfectly placed right after you experience darkness and lightning for the first time. That in itself foreshadows that the game has the ability to create horror. Witnessing the mercenaries fight other things that is not you is a breath of fresh air. And since you don't know the exact strength of what they're fighting, you're incentivized to be careful.
Doyle, what the hell are they doing here?
It's all part of Krieger's plan, Jack. He's cooked up a serum which enhances every organ and muscle in the recipient's body. So far, he's just been using it on primates. At least as far as I know.
Priority target. Fire at will. Where is he?
The stage really utilizes the design around the treetops. It captivates a feeling I'd best describe as the floor is lava. You feel safe up here, and whatever happens you don't want to go down there. Another scare factor is actually that the mutants can jump pretty high up, so even in cases where you take the treetop route, they can claw you to death with a jump scare. You also don't want to draw attention to yourself, so it's nice that you were taught how to stealth previously. With that, you can take out the hostiles at your height, so that you may progress whilst the ones beneath you are left to die. It's brutal, but it fits very well into the survival theme. Oh, and of course, in order to progress, you have to go down there. One of the bridges to the research station has been broken down completely. Luckily for me, there was a mercenary that acted as distraction, so I made a run for it. For this recorded playthrough, I actually was pretty lucky. I also knew where to go and what to do, so that kinda helped me a lot. There's around 2 alternative ways of playing this part of the level. One of them is saying fuck it, you go down there, blast your way through all the mutants. There's even hidden pickups inside the nests of the mutants, as well as dead scientists. I wonder if they ended up there before or after the outbreak. The third option being taking the vehicle that arrives pretty early on to the station you're at. It comes equipped with missiles and heavy machine guns. At the next part, you have to face them close quarters. For a 2004 game, the lightning and shadows are actually pretty useful. Oh, and don't forget about the grenades as well. Treehouse love to have these moments when you enter a room to find a mutant absolutely demolishing one of Krieger's men. I'm not complaining, as it makes you as a character feel like you're part of this chaotic incursion rather than the focus of everything. Anyhow, you find a keycard and you proceed to leave the research facility. The next stage in Treehouse is you basically dealing with the cleanup crew as you try to make your way to the bunker, so you won't see any more mutants for now. In general, the build up to this reveal of mutants is very nice. It's decently hidden as well. I believe a lot of people don't even know this game has mutants in it, which is funny considering they play such a large part of the whole game. Like, there's no image of them on the front or backside cover of the game, though they do have a brief appearance in the intro movie. But that intro movie is very unreliable and trippy, so it can come off as a hallucination. This way of flipping the experience is all great actually, and it's nice that there's foreshadowing to attentive players. However, speaking of foreshadowing, there are 2 things I've lied about in this video. Well, maybe lie is the wrong term here, but I didn't show you this. At the level before this one, when you enter the cave, there's a short cutscene.
Whatever that was, I hope it was the only one.
And in the treehouse before you go outside, you can find the corpse of a mutant, with Jack's reaction being incredibly goofy.
What the hell?
And as probably a lot of you know, the easiest way to create suspense and horror is through fear of the unknown. One way to do that is to not show the monster, or at least until the action starts. What I dislike about these two things then, is that they deliberately go against that. They show the monster, and in contrast they don't even add anything of value either. The cutscene in the cave might make you a bit paranoid that there's a monster lurking around, but it never happens, and there's a lot of mercenaries to focus on anyways. What could have worked in my opinion is that you don't need a cutscene, but you can keep the corpse on the ground. Perhaps with a creepy blood trail going into some vents you can't enter. When Jack asks the question,
The hell is that thing?
he could still have done that without him needing to see the actual creature, as he's already seen glimpses of them before. Alas, these are just my two complaints when it comes to foreshadowing. Everything else, amazingly well done. I love the hidden dialogue between mercenaries, the creepy radio commands, Krieger's intentions, this picture in the first level, the fact that there is illegal research going on, and that you were just taught on how to avoid enemies. Progressing further in the Treehouse level, and I got this vehicle.
Okay, you have the access card that gets you into the research area in the canyon.
Right. Let's find all these mutated monkeys and take them out. You mean Trigens? I said mutant monkeys. And I mean mutant monkeys. I'm not some damn scientist, and I'm not gonna start talking like one. A mutated monkey is a mutated monkey, damn it! Damn mutant monkeys! Let's take them out! Where did he go? Ah! I know you're out there! Who's that?
The rest of Treehouse is pretty straightforward. It ends with you attacking this small fort with explosives. It also features one of my favorite lines from Jack.
What did you do?
I can tell you, but it's more fun to make you wonder.
Once you enter this fort, there's a lot of reinforcements coming in, including a helicopter. However, I actually find the strategy to just make a run for the next level to work out pretty well. I don't know if this is intended or not, but it's a cool thing that you can do. I won't go into too much detail about the bunker. It's a very close quarters map, so you can probably guess what weapon you find here.
It's getting pretty loud out there. I hope the Trigens don't get through. You see something?
I also have to point out this set piece where you get to pull the lever in order to set some mutants free. The mercs are armored in this section, so it really helps to deal with some of them. In any case, you manage to intercept Valerie being moved to another place at the end of the level.
The pilot's dead. Jump! Valerie Constantine, CIA. I'm here on assignment.
You could have mentioned that back in port.
None of the other beach bombs had special forces training.
You had me checked out?
Company policy.
Then you know I'm a bit out of practice.
CIA has an undercover operative on this island. We lost contact almost 10 weeks ago.
Jack, right there.
Doyle?
Mission accomplished.
We'll catch up later. Go inland a few hundred yards and you'll find cages holding untrained Trigens. You've got to release them. That should keep the security forces off your back for a while.
Untrained Trigens? You mean some of them are trained?
Come on.
So yeah, Jack Carver has united with Valerie and is now tasked with destroying the regulator. This is gonna release even more mutants on the Isles, including other types we haven't seen yet.
Who knows what can go wrong with that?
The bunker featured quite a lot of high adrenaline action, so it gets flipped after that with a stealth segment. This entire level is set in the jungle during nighttime. It's got this really calm atmosphere to it. You can hear the cicadas making noise, there's tiki torches, and mercs are sleeping. But there's also some monsters creeping around. Some mercs are able to clear them out, whilst others not so much. I also have to give credit that this level features probably one of my favorite soundtracks from the game. The creepy but slow violins build up tension and suspense, but the beat comes in, granting you a feeling of relief, consistency, and calmness. So the combination of these two factors give you the feeling that you are in control of the situation. They are your prey, and you are the hunter. Gameplay wise, this part does not really innovate on anything new, but you could say that this is the first time you have a whole level dedicated to just stealthing, and where it's fully possible to do so without it being overly difficult. For example, in the 5th level research, you will almost always get busted before you reach the cave, as there's way too many enemies to sneak past. And in Treehouse, you can sneak through the initial part of the level, but later on it will be full assault mode, basically. So with that in mind, this level, named Steam, still comes off as memorable and unique. Even the final part, which features a large compound you need to take down, it has a lot of vegetation around its base, which makes it easy for you to find good angles to take down all the hostiles. I think this is something that Far Cry 1 excels at, which is that every level feels unique when playing it. The pacing of when you get introduced to new things such as weapons, enemies, or other tools is just really well done. And like I said, even there's no real practical, mechanical new thing, they still manage to have some of these levels stick out. It's really a testament that if the game was any longer than it is, it will probably have gone stale. This point ties back into how I feel this game is just like pure fun, but I'll get back to that later. Ironically, since I'm praising the level design here, the next one is actually my least favorite. For starters, I think it looks pretty ugly, especially at the start with this bridge going all the way over to this island. But if you disregard visuals, it's also pretty annoying to play. There's not a lot of routes you can take. If you end up in the water, you have to swim back up, and the truck you have is useless. Later on, there's also this task where you have to turn valves in order to stop gas from spreading, and it's just not fun because it's really hard to figure out where exactly you need to go and in which order you need to turn the valves. There is this room where there's these weird angles that enemies can shoot you, but you can barely see them. Weirdly enough though, the regulator level does include a lot of new things for you to try out. Gas, zip lines, a big truck, the cry vision goggles, as well as a new gun. So in a sense, it does follow the formula of introducing new things to the player, but it just is not executed well enough. And the praise I can give is that the final stage of the level is really fun. It features this large circular arena where you have to actually use your cry vision goggles. This is also where you're introduced to your first other assault rifle, which is basically gonna replace the M4. Speaking of guns, let's dive a little deeper into the weaponry of the game. There's a total of 11 different weapons you can find in the game. They all range from just simple machetes to an LMG.
You asshole! There is no way.
So the way the game is balanced is around the weapon slots. You always have 4 slots. You can't store weapons in like a safe house, you can't like bring them back. It's all about using what you find. You do, however, keep the ammo for the weapons, and some weapons share the same ammo. But of course, all the weapons also have their own pros and cons. So what weapon you're gonna use is gonna depend on your playstyle, the level, and as well as the enemies that you're facing. As it should be. I think the only weapon in the game that has a straight upgrade is the M4. The G36 is just better in all ways, basically. And I think this is okay, considering that the M4 is so popular and used throughout the beginning of the game that it might be nice to replace it. For all the other weapons in the game, I think you can always make an argument for why you will choose one over the other. Having said that, something I find sad is that the sniper rifle, the shotgun, and the silenced MP5 are 3 weapons I hardly ever ditched throughout my entire playthrough. Sure, you can make arguments to why you will use one gun over another one in certain situations. For example, the P90 could provide a nice alternative to the MP5, as it's got better damage output, but at the great cost of not being able to stealth kill in the game. This would be an acceptable cost in tighter levels that lack stealth, if it were not for the fact that you cannot foresee this as a first time player. But even if you knew the next level's layout, you also have no control of when and where you acquire weapons, So even if you would in this context ditch the MP5 for a P90, you will not know when you could get the MP5 back. Small tangent, but I also find that the MP5's movement speed penalty is not enough, because I wished for the machete to have its own place in the game. Not necessarily to deal damage, but as a means to run faster with.
You wanna go for a jog, man?
What are you doing with a knife?
What do you mean? Run faster with a knife. Everyone runs faster with a knife.
It's just like Counter-Strike. At least that's what I thought. I decided to do some testing, and it turns out that the machete and the pistol have the exact same movement speed. This means there's barely any point in going with the machete, and you should always bring the pistol. Unless you're trying to stealth with the machete, huh? So with that in mind, I think actually the game would have benefited a lot if there was an actual melee option instead of it taking a whole slot. I did some digging on this, and during development there was a plan to have you able to kick enemies with your weapon butt, but it was scratched. Now, there's also an issue with the ammo types. Because the sniper and the shotgun have their own unique ammo that no other gun shares, it incentivizes the player even more to stick to those two, as having weapons of the same ammo type will be less efficient. Because of this conundrum, when I was playing I was too afraid to swap out any weapons I knew were very strong. Perhaps the less used guns in the game could have used some buffs, and the stronger guns could have used some reduced max ammo, so as you'd actually have to switch to something else when you run out. Oh, the feel of the guns are still great to this day in my opinion. The shotgun's got that oomph sound, and the OICW gun you get later in the game, you can almost tell from sound alone that it does more damage than other assault rifles. Aim in the various weapons is pretty solid. With proper burst firing you can easily take out enemies at a distance, and if your target is very far away you can use single shot mode. This is especially useful when you're stealthing, as it allows for the silenced MP5 to have more consistent results. Oh, I never brought up the grenades. Don't get me wrong, they're not useless, I just keep forgetting to use them when playing. I guess the regular high explosive grenade is the one I use mostly, but there's even a flashbang and a smoke grenade. Flashbang I never used, so I don't have any clips of it, but it's probably good in close quarters. It stuns enemies for around 6 seconds. The smoke grenade is really nice when you're pinned down, as enemies will have a hard time finding you. You can see it as spawning in vegetation right in front of you. One of my absolute best moments in my entire playthrough was actually with a smoke grenade. It helped me buy time to reload and not get shot at.
Great work, Jack. Main power is down. I'm moving into the archive.
After reaching the regulator, Jack turns off the main power for the whole island. This causes even more chaos. So much so that he has to find Valerie again, since she gets pinned down by all these mutants that just arrived. How convenient. Oh, and the mutants, they're not really based on monkeys anymore. Instead, their origin is human. And they're kinda starting a revolution. So for Jack to reach his damsel in distress, yes, they're pulling that trope. She's at the archives at the other side of the island he's at. For better or worse, it's also a war zone out there. To add some fun to this challenge, they offer vehicles for you to drive, but keen players might choose to walk instead. Something missable, early on there's actually a hang glider you can find. It's a nice little set piece where you get to observe most fights from above, rather than boots on the ground. It's the war zone that's been shown that makes this level stick out for me. There's something captivating about watching two different AIs fight each other. I don't know why. It's something I've enjoyed ever since I got introduced into video games. But I bet it's not just me, as there are other games that do this thing as well. Something like Shadow of War even has like a mechanic centered around this type of thing, where you basically make a bet that your minion's gonna win a fight against another opponent in this arena. So yeah, the original Far Cry does this excessively throughout its course, and this Rebellion Warzone really shows it. Though I do have a minor critique to it, and that is generally that sometimes the AI will kind of start ignoring each other and both will start to fight you instead. But often you can just avoid this by sneaking. Whichever route you take to reach the archives, it always feels like this long but hectic journey. I think that's one of the positive components to why I think this map is really good. You can follow the road, go full speed and hope for the best whilst these mercs and Trigens are fighting each other. But things can quickly go wrong for you. And getting stranded out here is a really bad idea. Especially since there's these really big mutants known as Fat Boys. You need several mags just to take out one of them. Thus, conserving ammo is really smart, because there's a lack of pickups out here. Of course, the cry vision and binoculars will still help you keep yourself safe and make sure that no one else is chasing you. Two other noticeable set pieces from Rebellion is an avalanche which blocks your pathway, forcing you to go on foot. Whilst these new mutants that can use guns will fire at you from above. They're also very jumpy, thus they are harder to aim at. And there's also this fort where you get to observe a big part of the battlefield. The mountain mortar is also back, so you can blow up some merc vehicles. I can see an argument made for that the visuals on the hills and general terrain on this level is kinda ugly. Especially if you compare it to Steam, which is also another nighttime level. This one feels a bit more bland, especially if you play it slow. But maybe that's the point, as there could have been technical limitations just due to the sheer size of this map. In any case, I still find it cool as fuck when these mercs and Trigens fight each other. And it all culminates to this last stand that the mercs are doing at the entry to the archives. Seriously, seeing these big Trigens with rockets for hands shooting down a helicopter is insanely cool. It's almost ironic that you're the one that's pushing from the Trigen side, trying to get into the archives yourself. That's why I find smoke so useful at this part, because you don't want both sides to attack you at once, so in that sense you can easily get in and out of the action, as their numbers cripple without your involvement. At the very end, when you finally get through the merc barricade, you can find these lab scientists escaping from the archives. Whilst these new riot shield mercenaries are guarding the gates. This entire level is just so climactic in my opinion, building tension into this great facility that's being guarded. At this point in the game you can easily say that the status quo has been completely broken. Because of that, the atmosphere is going to be less calm throughout the rest of the game, and it's a good excuse to ramp up the difficulty, as now they will be more set up and alert looking for hostiles. Basically, the mercenaries feel just as hunted as Jack Carver did when he arrived at the Isles.
Val should be somewhere in this complex.
Yeah, but there's not much left of this place.
Then you don't have a lot to search, do you? That complex is where they stored a bunch of old test subjects. If one of those things finds Val before you do, she's dead.
I think I just found one of your test subjects.
Welcome to the archives. To contrast with the open outside, we now have a close quarters inside segment. Featuring of course our very unique enemy, the invisible Trigen. They have only one strong counter, and that's the cry vision goggles. I'm a big fan of this level's environment. Sure, we've had bunkers and other research labs, but this one just seems a bit more sleek and modern, not to mention the size of the facility. The level varies in both gameplay and style. This room with blue lightning where you have to dive into water in order to progress. The already mentioned invisible Trigens. The part where you fight numerous but lesser Trigens within the maintenance of the facility. And near the end you even get to be outdoors. And last but definitely not least memorable is this very challenging segment right after you go down an elevator.
This is Mantis team. No sign of Carver. I'm initiating a sweep of areas 3 through 7.
All right. Mantis team, report back as soon as the area is clear.
Roger that. Mantis out.
The enemies have been trying to stop Jack Carver with regular dumb goons, but now they're sending in their very own elite force. They have sturdier armor, stronger weapons, and they also wear cry vision goggles. Now you have to face them in this labyrinth of containers, checking each and every corner to not get spotted first. Like I said, it's difficult, but at least it doesn't bog down to bad luck. There's plenty of ways to go about this part, from using smokes and flashes, to avoiding direct contact by just keeping an eye on them on the minimap, but that still requires you to spot them with your binoculars first. The only sad part about this encounter is that the visuals have aged a bit poorly. Like, the boxes look very arcadey and have obviously been just copy-pasted around to create this labyrinth, and I personally think that the lighting could have been darker, emphasizing the feeling that the elites have this tactical advantage. At least the size of the room still adds a bit of megalophobia to this day. Back to the gameplay of this part, I also appreciate that you can't really rush through it because you have to find some key cards in order to progress. Once you pass through to the other side of the room, I believe they even spawn enemies behind you to really push you into a corner and not know which area of the room is really secure. After beating this, the level's still not done though, as you notice how the elites have taken care of Trigens outside. This is also a bit easy to miss, but Crow is actually here ordering them around, but he quickly disperses with a helicopter. It was a good idea for them to include some sort of outside segment, because the facility which you are infiltrating is actually split into 2 separate levels. A minor note about the elite guards, which I wish will have been improved upon, is that their voices are exactly the same as regular mercenaries. If they sounded like the guys in hazmat suits, they would have been way more threatening. Back indoors, it's a very similar set piece as we saw earlier, but this one actually I think looks a bit better with the various colors on the containers, instead of boring crates. It's a bit more chaotic as there's one big Trigen the elite mercenaries are fighting, but on the flip side there's also ventilation shafts you can sneak through. Finally, after all this, you beat the archives. I've already commented a lot about the positive aspects of the level, but I can't lie that it does have an issue with navigation. Before you dive into the water, there's actually this small physics puzzle, but I think it's poorly communicated that you're even supposed to go down in the water. The props are practically hiding your continued path, and that makes it really difficult to figure out that you're even supposed to interact with that. And then in the first warehouse, the keycard you need to find is actually worn by one of the elite guards. I can imagine with some bad luck, let's say you kill them from a far distance, that you will not see the keycard being dropped. And as already described in the second warehouse with the containers, the fact that you have to enter the ventilation shafts can also be an issue. In any case, Jack Harbour is in his second elevator in the same facility, going very deep underground. And this here location is actually where some of the mutants were created, maybe even designed as seen in these huge holograms. So there's plenty of scientists being guarded by elite mercs, just trying to survive against the outbreak, but Jack's goal is not them, but Valerie herself. This level is reminiscent of Treehouse in my opinion, as there will be plenty of times where you are basically sneaking between the two sides fighting. And of course they're using the horror element again. Just this time there's way bigger monsters and way stronger mercenaries. Aesthetically speaking, it also ramps up the sci-fi element. You can find these tubes of the Fat Boy mutants, and these great rooms with energetic science mumbo-jumbo. I honestly love the trope of creepy research underneath a tropical island. It's almost creepy how well disguised it is above ground.
I'm stuck here, Doyle.
I'm coming, Jack.
That's got it. Good call, Doyle.
Near the end of the level, in order to progress, you actually need to flood the chambers. They need to pass through some drenched offices, and then you interject just as Valerie runs out of ammo.
Oh, you bastards! You want some of this?
Val!
Taking out 2 mutants.
There's some bad news. I've been trying to call in help from outside to get us out of here, but there's a problem.
What's up, Harland?
Krieger has set up an electromagnetic field which is blocking any external transmissions. We're being jammed. I should be able to get you to the source of the field, and I'm in a cruiser right outside.
That'll also put us near Krieger's main compound. Maybe I can take a look around and see what we can do to shut it down.
Do whatever you want, but as soon as we get a signal out, I'm done. I'm not even getting paid for this crap.
The journey from taking down the power, starting a rebellion, and reaching all the way over here is very satisfying in my opinion. Because technically speaking, the distance isn't that far. It's the path filled with danger that makes you feel like a survivor taking upon this adventure. And it's after reaching this point that you get to return to a familiar feel and design. Back to being an action hero, you can say, as you were in the early parts of the game.
Okay, I'll leave you here and take Val to Pagao, where Krieger's main laboratory is. I've placed the objectives on your radar, so you should know where to go. By the way...
It was you bastard! I'm gonna find you and rip your throat out! I know where you are, and I'm on my way there now!
Jack, switch to the new frequency now.
Now you've done it, Doyle. Your friend sounds like he's pretty pissed.
Damn it, he knows I'm in on it, and he can track us with my LSI. We've got to hurry.
It's very refreshing to see daylight again. And I also appreciate the usage of a day and night cycle to actually show in a subtle way how far you've come. Anyhow, this level is unique in the same sense that Steam was. There's nothing mechanically new to encounter, but it still provides a unique experience because of the way it's designed. Well, there's one minor thing you've never seen before, but that's at the end, so I'll talk about it later. There are two major elements in what makes this level stick out. First, there's not a single mutant in this level, not even hints of them, so it's just like the early parts of the game. And secondly, it's an extremely freeform level. The amount of approaches to different objectives makes this level very replayable. Basically, Jack Carver is tasked to take down 3 radio towers. These 3 radio towers are all on 3 different islands, and you can choose which one to go to first. So yeah, it's definitely the ultimate sandbox experience. It's also funny to have a boat as your primary transportation. Except you're not the only one out on the ocean, there's plenty of patrols going around. With this type of vehicle you can actually perform a sort of boat drive-by, which is kinda neat. There's also this fun gimmick where you can act as a ferry. You can find this platform attached to a boat, and it actually fits an entire car back there, meaning you can actually transport one of the cars to another island. I don't know if it's that useful, but I was surprised that it actually worked. I think my absolute favorite moment when I played this level was when I had climbed up a hill dodging an entire mercenary camp, only to start engaging some scouts up here, such as the camp that I skipped spots me, and I start literally dodging rockets on top of this rope bridge. I managed to reach the tower I'm supposed to blow up, fight this one guy that guards it, and I was lucky for him to start reloading as I was just about to die. And it kicks off with an explosion as I run away from the island.
Oh yeah, I love the smell of Primal Cord Plus in the morning.
You're a real funny guy, Carver.
This and other enjoyable experiences is what makes me like this level. And after you've blown up all these towers, one really mad crow is on his way to eliminate you once and for all. It's a boss battle against a helicopter whilst you're on a sinking freighter.
You're gonna pay for that, Carver. I'm gonna end your little adventure right now!
And this section is pretty hard, because the sinking sorta creates a timer for you to take him down, and somehow his helicopter requires an extra amount of firepower. It is however fun and refreshing to have the rocket launcher as your primary weapon for once, and the game is nice enough to actually give you a rocket launcher and ammo for it inside the freighter. And somehow Crow manages to escape with his helicopter as he flies away, and for the second time Doyle picks you up.
He jumped. He's swimming for Pagao.
What are you waiting for? Take him out!
I'm coming for you first, Jack. He's shark food. I'm sorry, Jack. We need some critical information kept on a PDA my colleague Dr. Anderson had with him.
As a short public service announcement, if you find a helicopter fight to be tremendously tough, I found this video by Abonwin that features a little trick that makes it a lot easier.
Then I got a brilliant idea. I threw up a flashbang and it worked.
Oh my god!
Next mission's pretty fun, nothing remarkable. Before stopping the operations on the island, Doyle wants you to secure a PDA that contains some of the important research about mutants. There's plenty of vegetation to go around here, and the environment is a bit more lush and swampy, so stealthing is definitely a good approach here. I'd say this level offers a bit of everything. It's got a section where you're outdoors and one where you're inside. At some parts you face the mercs, at some parts you face the mutants, and at some parts they face each other. Huge props goes to the indoor segment. I think the aesthetic of this ancient ruin is really good. Facing the Trigens inside there makes them feel like this mythical being, you know, that sort of belongs to the ruin. Overall it's a bit of a filler level, though it's still enjoyable. Now that we have experienced a big portion of the game, including its various enemies and weapons you can have, I'm very eager to finally start talking about this one topic: the difficulty and the Trigens. Bear with me, because I think this is the most controversial talking point about the entire game. This game is hands down difficult. I know it, you know it, everyone who's played it knows it. And a large part of this is because the game is not a run and gun shooter. You can't pretend to be Doom guy, basically. Thus, the game pushes you to play strategically. You need to use your binoculars, you need to get into good positions, and you need to consider your ammo and target prioritization. So I think it's important to ask the question, why is the game difficult? And even more broadly, why is the game designed the way it is? When thinking about this, I was inspired by something called style of play, that a TTRPG YouTuber known as Matthew Colwell talks about in one of his videos. It goes into the blending of genres and rules. Rules can be translated as gameplay mechanics in this case.
Styles of play. And for the purpose of this video, a style of play is the manner in which the rules of a game reinforce a certain theme, tone, or genre. That's your style of play. You have rules designed to evoke a genre. And that combination, rules plus genre, is your style of play. What is the game about? Genre. And how is it about it? Rules.
Keep in mind that the way we use the word genre is different within the video game culture compared to D&D culture. For example, you might describe one of Far Cry's genres as first-person shooter, but in this context it's got nothing to do with what either me or Matthew will refer to as genre. First-person shooter doesn't mean anything in a vacuum, it is literally just a perspective, and it does not entail what the tone of the game is. It's like saying black and white movies are its own genre. It's at most a directional tool.
If you take a generic third-person actioner and just put the player in a Spider-Man costume, is the player going to feel like they're playing Spider-Man? If you took Counter-Strike and just replaced all the models with Marvel superheroes, would it feel like a superhero game? Nope. Because a style of play is more than just the cosmetic coat of paint you put over something. It's about the design of the game, the actual rules.
So how will I define then Far Cry's different genres? It's definitely an adventure game, it's definitely an action game, but there's something more to it. And you might think, oh, is it horror? Not really. They use horror elements, sure, but it's not the primary feel that they're trying to go for. Instead, I'd say it's more of a survival game, and I can explain why. When we say the word survival in terms of video games, we often associate that with crafting tables and a heavy resource management. I'm not talking in the context of mechanics, I'm talking in the context of feeling, presentation, and theme. So in that sense, survival in its core is about living, about facing an environment that really wants to kill you. And what is Jack Carver's main goal? Well, it's to survive. It's in the title itself. Far Cry is interpreted as you're far away from home. But then you have this cheesy and silly writing.
Bad spy movie?
Because the game is not trying to be gritty. So what they achieve with this kind of weird combo is something in the sense of Arnold from Predator or Rambo. As in facing overwhelming odds and it's an actual challenge, but the tactical swag is what makes you come through. Compared to the other trope of a hero that just faces a lot of the danger like it's a fucking walk in the park. So that's basically what Matthew refers as genre. But when it comes to the rules, or mechanics, the game then supports this through various means. You get all your gear, weapons, ammo from looting. You're provided with these binoculars as a huge scouting tool to give off this feeling that you're some sort of predator. Not a sexual one. God, why is this word ruined? There's of course, as mentioned, some horror elements in there, which spices up the incentive to stay alive and not get caught by something. You also are provided with very, very few allies in the game, and this way of being isolated is a good way of giving off that you're not in a friendly environment. The point A to point B design structure of levels not only is a good way to give off the adventuring tone, but really settles the survival aspect, is that it discourages you from roaming around and looking for silly collectibles or doing side quests. It's all about pushing further. And finally, the game being punishing and difficult is a way to even more encourage this tone. But I can still see the argument that maybe the survival aspect is not really worth the cost of accessibility. I mean, in the end, it's not really the game you would play for immersion, so I would have been all for if the difficulties was a bit more accurate, that easy actually represents easy. I know this entire genre talking might be a bit of a tangent, but it's actually something that I want to bring up later in this video, to highlight some of the contrast to the other games in the series. Nonetheless, I still had a lot of fun with how the game plays. It pushes me to use tactics and play carefully. I think this is overall the opinion of the game, until you reach a certain point. Because you see, when it comes to playing strategically, there's a large element you lose in indoor levels. Initiation. or more specifically, choices of initiation. And what I mean by that is there's some parts of the game where you are the one that spots the enemies and you are the one that initiates on them, whilst at other parts of the game you can enter a new room and suddenly you are attacked by multiple hostiles. When you do have multiple ways of initiating, not only does it help you know how many enemies there are, but also where they are, which also lets you benefit more from the stealth system. It's also more convenient to escape if that's what you need. And finally, since the player is more in control of those engagements, if they die, it's less annoying because they chose to go that specific path. Clearly, the core of Far Cry's gameplay relies on a lot of these elements, so if you compare it to those segments where you lack choice in your initiation, it's gonna get a lot harder and you have to use other tactics. To be honest, when I played and I was limited in this way, it didn't really make it any less fun. Like I said before, one of my favorite moments in the entire playthrough I had was when I was forced to engage with 2 fat boy mutants, with no way of avoiding them and no other approaches. Bless you, smoke grenade. As soon as the game has these huge outdoor segments, it allows so much freedom that it's very easy for you to avoid danger as well, which in that sense makes it more approachable. Whilst the indoor segments are pressuring, you can't escape from the danger if they find you. This is basically what I mean by the choices of initiation, and in one way on how it is a restriction on the player if you don't have it. And I kinda implied on how restrictions spark creativity. However, there is a fatal flaw to this approach, and that's the quantity of it. As the way I see it, every level's design can be split into 2 categories, sandbox and linear. And these categories kinda relate back to the player's agency and initiative. Sandbox level lets the player have a lot of choice in initiative, linear levels don't. Thus, sandbox is more freeform, whilst linear is more tight. You can also connect this to one being mainly outdoors and the other one being mainly indoors. And that leaves us with the mutant aspect. And where will mutants be put? Well, first of all, they're better designed for close range, thus they're gonna fit better into tighter levels. And secondly, the mutants relate to the horror aspect, so you don't want the player to have an upper hand against them. So you will find most mutants in linear levels, where the player is hunted by them, rather than the opposite. And here's how I categorized all the levels. Notice the problem around the mid-game. There's simply an issue with too many linear levels in a row. There's just too much distance from the core gameplay loop. The underground design and visuals blend into each other, and the end result is that you get tired of it. This linear level design should not take up so much space of the game. I think this is the major flaw of Far Cry, not the mutants themselves. It just happens to coincide that the mutants are introduced around this part of the game.
What the hell is that thing?
So that's the question, is the mutants the issue, or is it the environments that they're always presented in? Because a majority of the levels where you face the Trigens are in linear levels. I also hear complaints that some of the mutants are way too hard to kill. But the fact that one of the biggest mutants require more than an entire mag of a shotgun is honestly what makes them so scary. And that's also why I appreciate the designers giving them a rocket launcher, because that's actually dodgeable compared to a regular gun. The primates included are also pretty dodgeable. With proper movement techniques you can outfight them, even in the tight corridors, because you can always turn a corner so that you get them one by one. I am, however, talking about my subjective experience. It's just a hypothesis that maybe the Trigens aren't at fault, and it's instead the level design that could be changed. But to be completely fair, I'm not as annoyed as others when it comes to fighting bullet-spawned enemies. I mean, I played through Mass Effect 1 on Insanity, where sometimes it feels like it takes 5 minutes to kill just one guy. You gotta be kidding me. I guess in the end, I still love the Trigens and their inclusion in the game. I think it makes it really stick out from just being a generic kill bad guys shooter. I think the game is very tailored to those that already have a lot of experience with first-person shooters. And for me, that was pretty refreshing. It's nice to be challenged and actually feel the fear of losing and having to start over from a checkpoint. As a side note, you can actually make quick saving possible, and I wouldn't judge anyone if they did that. Most modern games released are getting too casual, just to attract a wider audience. But if you're looking for something a bit more niche that keeps you on your toes, then I'd say this is a fun game. Keep in mind that this is not an arena shooter that requires good reflex or reaction time. It really tests your game sense, so to speak, rather than your skills at aiming. And it punishes you pretty hard for screwing up. And I think that is what made this game really stick out in its gameplay. Well, enough talking about linear levels and Trigens. If you don't remember, Jack needs to upload a PDA to a mobile uplink.
What the hell do they have a nuke for? This is a genetics lab. Duh, it's 'cause they're scared. If something goes wrong, they have some way to clean up the mess real quick like.
The goal of this level is simple: reach the mobile uplink. The journey, however, is not so easy. It's all centered around going down the stream of this river. So in a sense, it's kinda akin to the Rebellion level, except this time it's a boat instead of a car. The river's visuals are also way better. It really sells the feel of an entrenched swamp with these cricket sounds and green-brown color palettes. Surprisingly, the river features a nice mix between intense action and sneaking around. It allows for plenty of opportunities to park your boat and use the sidelines of the river, possibly replenishing any health or finding a new boat that hasn't taken any damage yet. At the end of the river, guarding the uplink, a familiar face is waiting for Jack. Sailing down the river itself, there's plenty of opportunities to do fun but very risky stunts. A part of me thinks that quicksaving definitely could have benefited this level a lot because of that. For example, when I decided to go full speed into this Merc bridge that they had set up. A very stupid idea. But on the other side, the intensity of staying alive and reaching the next checkpoint had my adrenaline pumping. Like, do you see how much health I have left? Neither do I! After around a minute after reaching this checkpoint, I died. But I was fine, because that specific challenge of the Merc Bridge was over. Another set piece is this low-flying helicopter. For some reason, I always found helicopters extremely cool, and I do wonder if it actually might be because of this game, as it was an early video game in my youth. Thanks, Far Cry. At the end of the river rests a VTOL, together with some fortifications. Of course, I ran my boat into the shoreline. It's a pretty cool sequence. I think the dynamicness of it all is what makes it feel authentic. Like the helicopter behind me could have been scripted, but if I wanted to, I could have stopped my boat and shot it down beforehand. This dramatic situation just happened to line up naturally. At this finale, we have a second boss battle with Crow. It's him standing there with a bunch of powerful guards around him. It results in a simple and challenging, but also fun, final encounter. Though I would have loved to see some more focus on Crow himself as a powerful enemy. Maybe some more voice lines and all that. Minor appreciation for a 2004 game, the fact that he dodges my grenades when I throw them is a really nice touch for an enemy AI. Also, the cover usage is not too bad either.
Cole! Come in, Cole! What the devil's going on there?
So you're the famous Dr. Krieger.
Who is this? Who am I talking to?
You'll find out soon enough.
Connect the PDA to the uplink.
Jack, come in, Jack.
Yeah?
I'm on my way to your position. Jack! Bingo. This is the location of the facility where they manufacture the mutagen. It even looks like he has an arming sequence for a tactical nuke in case they had to cover their tracks. Thanks, Crow.
Oh yeah.
Look at this pre-rendered cutscene that happens right after. And don't tell me those look better than the ones that are in-game. It's a trope to have these type of cutscenes, but they look so bad in Far Cry. Speaking of tropes, it's the "oh my god, sexy woman" cutscene. where Valerie decides to take a shower whilst providing a bunch of exposition about the operation.
Army intelligence busted Krieger for unapproved human testing. He went private sector. So we sent Doyle in as a lab assistant to keep tabs on his work.
So are we here to stop Krieger or save Doyle?
I'm here to keep those creatures from getting off this island.
So I'm just along for the ride?
Good boy. Doyle mentioned a mercenary base in this area. Let's pay them a visit.
Just to be obvious, the plan for the next 2 levels is pretty clear. Find a local tactical nuke, put the nuke where the mutagen is manufactured, and then escape.
I spotted a small camp nearby. Looks like the perfect place to borrow.
Hey look! Valor's actually with us in these next 2 levels. She's not the most fun to have around, as she can ruin stealth attempts, but at least in combat she tends to keep herself alive and take out a few mercs. Anyways, as a lot of FPS games feature at least once, we have the turret sequence. And honestly, this part is brutally difficult. It took me about 8 tries before I completed it, as you basically cannot make any mistakes. So in the end I had to actually learn the spawning of enemies and basically pre-fire them in order to succeed. Well, it was indeed satisfying to get it over with. A really annoying journey. But suddenly my brain got this funny question. What actually happens if I shoot Valerie? I forgot the game hadn't saved yet. I have to redo the turret sequence. Whatever. I've been pretty negative regarding this part, so to make up for that there's a new weapon Jack can pick up after defeating Crow. This endgame weapon is the light machine gun, and it deals an excruciating amount of damage. It's the perfect timing to raise the power fantasy, so I'm all approving of it. You're also offered the perfect space to try it out in, once Jack and Val reach the next level titled Factory. I'm talking close quarters featuring as many elite mercs Krieg can throw at you. Its ending consists of you holding it against waves whilst Valerie arms the nuclear device.
Get the hell out of here.
After the nuclear device has been armed to blow up the mutagen laboratory, Jack and Valerie make a run for it, getting knocked out in the process.
Inside the lab.
Okay. Antidote time. Look for a red case with a biohazard symbol.
By the way, before the nuke was detonated, Doyle suggested to Jack and Valerie to inject themselves with an antidote, just in the case that the explosion might spread the mutagen into them. Valerie hesitates, but Jack insists that they shall take the shot.
Jack! Take a look into the future! Nature has failed mankind! Mere humans like you are about to be obsolete! I've only taken a few thousand years of evolution and put it into a test tube. Survival of the fittest! Good luck!
Thanks.
It's the endgame, and Jack has lost all of his equipment, including the beloved binoculars. He's now in a Trigen-infested jungle and all you're offered is an M4 with 10 bullets. This part is definitely not about fighting back, but just making a run for it. Sort of reminiscent to the intro cinematic to the game. And yeah, almost every game has this sort of moment where you lose all your gear. And I think Far Cry handles it okay. There's not too many tactics to make use of, except going into bushes to rest up your stamina, or maybe throw in the occasional rock here and there. I can understand disliking this part a bit because of the trial and error sort of method you have to use. But I gotta admit, even after 2 or 3 failed attempts, reaching the helicopter is satisfying. And having all these mutants breathing down your neck is also pretty fucking tense.
That must be the way out. Oh, at last.
I couldn't get to the radio, Jack. Are you okay?
Well, I'm lost on a jungle island infested with mutants, but other than that, I'm doing great. How are you?
Yeah, I get the idea, wise ass.
With the helicopter's miniguns, you can slaughter any of the Trigens that are both behind you and in front of you. Once they're basically mincemeat, Jack can finally move on. It's time to find Krieger, get Valerie, and get the fuck off these rocks. His main compound, couldn't be more fitting for a villain, is within a volcano. When Jack finds the armory to stock up on his gear, comes the absolute best quote of all games in the Far Cry series.
Doyle, my armor's turning green!
Doyle tells Jack that the antidote he took earlier simply wasn't enough, and now he needs to go to Krieger to see if he can find a proper cure. Before he turns into a mutant, that is.
The final push to Krieger's facility is pretty difficult. There's plenty of Trigens and mercenaries fighting each other, so rockets will fly over you all the time. I guess you could say this is the culmination of everything the game has to offer. Vehicles, shotguns, snipers, rocket launchers, Trigens, mercs, some stealth. It's highly intense though, as it feels like there's always someone chasing you. Not to mention the lack of cover, forcing you to watch a 360 angle. I enjoy the pressure of the challenge, as it fits the tone of the narrative at this point of the story. So I got nothing more to say. At the bottom of the volcano you enter Krieger's compound, to the final level of the game.
I wouldn't worry about it, my dear. You won't live long enough to see what happens next.
Alright, that's the final fun moment in the game. I really hate to be pessimistic, but the rest of the game is gonna get really bad. Even the fight itself we just saw with Krieger has its flaws. The absolute Sigma that invented the mutants. The fight itself is pretty awkward. Since he has around 4 mercs guarding him, it's kinda hard to push out, so you're like just stuck behind this desk. And Krieger himself dies kinda quickly, and if you manage to kill him, the cutscene just starts playing and you don't actually have to fight the other mercs.
Where's the antidote?
Who infected you? The mutagen can only be administered through subdermal injection. Oh, you should turn out to be a beautiful specimen.
Die!
The old man was always one for melodrama. Too bad he had no head for business.
And of course it's the great twist in the story. And that is that Doyle is betraying you.
Working for the government taught me that where there's a weapon, There's money to be made.
Why didn't you just...
He doesn't care about stopping the mutants, he wants to sell the formula for money. I'm gonna get back into criticizing the twist here, and how incredibly stupid it all is. But for now I'll just focus on the level.
Doyle, unless you give us the antidote, you're not leaving this island alive. Now, I know you won't believe me until I've got a gun pointed at your head, but it's true.
Sorry, Jack. I'm gonna need it. Forgive me if I don't shake your hand.
I'm coming for you, buddy.
So you take the elevator down and you're ready to enter the actual volcano. Sounds cool, right? And I do find the environment to be pretty epic and fitting for the finale, but it has a glaring issue with its level design. In this huge arena, there's 3 Trigens with guns that can actually spot you from very far away, and then 4 fat boys with rocket launchers. So what's the natural strategy and playstyle? Well, it's by cheesing it and staying at the entry to the entire room. Like, there's no other way of playing this part, because if you push out, you'll get shot down by the Trigens with guns, because there's really no cover. And by staying here, the fat boys have a hard time getting to you. And to top it all off, they haven't given you any grenades since you lost all your gear. It's like they don't exist in the final part of the game, even if you want to use them. Because if you had a smoke grenade, at least then you could push out and it'll be a bit more fun. Just to clarify, I don't mind that the finale is hard, but the way the tools that you've been using through the game are discouraged is very boring. Shouldn't the ultimate finale be a challenge where you have to make use of all the tactics up to this point? Or better yet, something that enhances the entire experience altogether. Like, imagine if Jack got some mutant powers because of the infection. Something like the end of Titanfall 2 where you get this pistol that has literal aim hacks. I think that's a good example of how you can make your player feel overpowered at the end of the game. But no, we're stuck with cheesing it like this. And after this we're actually not done yet, as there is one final battle. It's some elite guards in this clunky area. And honestly, I die here so many times as well. Like, you're out of ammo because you have to use it all for the fat boys, so it makes it very tedious. To make things worse, also the positioning of the enemies makes it feel like you get killed unfairly. Like, I do a quick peek and I got insta-killed by a rocket launcher.
You deserve to be shot wearing that shirt. You're quite the resourceful one, aren't you?
Hell, even the fucking stairs up here are so ugly.
Ugh, I hate stairs.
Oh my god, you hate stuff too?
These are the stairs I take to the final room, featuring the absolute plot twist villain. Something in the development cycle must have been rushed here, I swear. Well, there he is.
This wasn't in your plans, was it, Doyle?
Doyle himself, in person. What's he got to say for his traitorous acts?
No, please. You don't understand. They sent me. They're always watching.
Oh. Okay. What? Who's watching?
You can't change this. You can't change the future.
Probably not, but I can make sure you're not a part of it. Stupid bastard.
Jack takes the actual antidote back to a boat and cures Valerie. And we get to see the documents of her operation, titled Project Far Cry. And the credits roll. So I wasn't kidding when I said that the story is pretty bad, and I'm gonna break it down. Much of the story is flawed, oddly paced, and unclear on what you are currently doing. In actuality, I did not really know what happened plot-wise in some levels until making this video. It might just be a lack of in-game subtitles and constant objective text that modern games have spoiled me with, so that without that I can't have a clear understanding of what the goal is. When I played, I just kept moving forward without asking why. If I try to summarize it, I guess it will be that Krieger is some flawed transhumanist that wants to create the next evolution of humankind. The CIA sent in Doyle as a spy. Valerie was then sent in to get an update from Doyle. I think the original idea was for Valerie to just be a journalist, but I guess they wanted her to have some sort of military experience and for her to be connected to Doyle. And since Jack was brought along for the ride...
What do we have here? This may work out even better than I planned.
Doyle took the opportunity to use him for his own personal gain. And I guess at least the Doyle twist is not the worst in terms of foreshadowing. If you consider all the actions that screw things over for Jack and many others, it's all related to Doyle's decisions. He seems to say one thing, but it turns out the consequence is something else. Like the communication center at the start was just the first step to let the Trigens out, and then having the advanced ones escape after you blow up the regulator. I guess he wanted to use this chaos so that he could sell the data more safely. It's kinda weird that Doyle is a head scientist, but still needs Jack to find a PDA. Shouldn't he already have access to all that stuff? Even more weird is that Valerie does not question this at all. Hey Doyle, who exactly are we sending this data to that is extremely dangerous to the entirety of mankind? Guess we'll never know.
Jack, come in, Jack.
Yeah?
I'm on my way to your position. Doyle told me you uploaded the info. That's some good work.
And then at the volcano level, after you defeat Krieger, Doyle mentions something that the Trigens sees Krieger as their father.
Why didn't you just kill Krieger yourself?
The Trigens are fiercely loyal, and you just killed their father. I'd love to see how they take the news, but I've got a super mutagen to sell.
But this aspect in the story is so poorly shown. There's literally Trigens storming the base that Krieger is in. His personal guard is still just human. I think there was some final changes that happened to the game due to time constraints. You see, inside the factory level, where you deploy the nuke, I think there was a plan to have a big boss fight. There's some cut dialogue still available in the game files.
Oh man, don't tell me we're gonna have to fight one of those.
What? What is it?
I don't know, but it's freaking huge.
You found one of the Omega strain Trigen, Jack. That thing is a masterpiece of genetic engineering. It's the culmination of Krieger's research, the ultimate super soldier. From the current data I've processed, looks like he's turning them into some sort of mobile artillery.
There's even a fully textured model of the Omega Trigen. What is really incredible though, is that there's actually modders that have brought this thing to life. Do mind that this is just a showcase of the work in progress mod. I got the footage from the main developer themselves. And they're putting a lot of effort into remaking Far Cry 1, bringing in the cut content that was never included in the base game. It's titled Beta Aesthetics, and I recommend looking into it if you want to know more. If you're really interested in cut content, there's these articles on ModDB by Change of the Ways that go quite in depth on how the development progressed. For instance, the game intended to first have aliens involved, as well as villagers that live on the Isles. That reminds me a little bit about Crysis in the third game. Anyways, I also wonder if there was an idea that Krieger would be the actual Omega Trigen, as it will actually even out the pacing a bit. Not only will Krieger's appearance make a lot more sense, as in the actual game he goes from normal human to semi-transformed mutant. He does this in just the amount of time that Jack will get kicked off the helicopter to reach in the volcano. When playing, it feels like I missed something. Also, it will push the Doyle twist a bit earlier just to give some time for him to actually taunt you more, and perhaps add some more complexity to why he's doing it except just for money. In conclusion about the plot, it kinda has a very bad pacing to it, and some missed potential. Something positive about the writing is actually its world building through mercenaries. For example, there's hints that they want to leave the archipelago just like Jack does.
Crow's gonna give an extra couple grand to the one who takes him out.
It'll take more than that to make me stick my neck out.
2 grand? That's enough for a ticket off this rock, and that's enough for me.
But are sadly bound to stay due to contracts and finance issues. There are signs that they're being manipulated just to not ask any questions.
When I was over at Big Owl, we usually got new updates every week. Over here, this week, nothing. It's like we're completely isolated or something.
What are you talking about? The hut's full of stuff to read.
It's all old. No new news at all. Like a complete blackout on the rest of the world. It's like the rest of the world just went away.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. With all the newspapers and stuff, it's like they just rotated from island to island and hope nobody notices.
And sometimes it's completely kept out of the loop.
Power failure, maybe. Emergency reserves are kicking on, but it'll take time for full power. Seems like we had an accident.
Accident?
Well, how do you explain it, Einstein?
You think it was an accident?
I don't know.
I hear we've got an unwelcome visitor, so maybe he sabotaged the main regulator.
But Crow would have told us if we had an intruder, right?
Of course he would. You worry too much.
They're not even aware that there's an intruder, and this is halfway through the game. My headcanon is that the mercs are purposefully stationed around so they can easily get taken in for experimentation, and some others used as fighting dummies for the Trigens to gain combat experience. The mercenaries are in some way a kind of cattle for Krieger, goons that don't have any human value. This manipulation plot I think was pretty interesting. One thing I would love to see was for like someone like Crow to realize this manipulation and switch sides near the end of the game.
Take a look into the future!
What the heck is that?
End your little adventure right now!
Thanks. Crow!
I'm always gonna be Team Merc. Sadly though, the game doesn't have any real depth in its writing. I mean, I guess you could say that it does go in a very shallow way into the ethics of modern industries, like how Doyle values his own wealth more than the betterment of human society, and Krieger's goal with improving humanity clearly includes a lot of suffering behind the scenes. Yeah, these villains are cartoonishly egoistic, and this little story analysis I just did, I don't think anyone on the developer team was expecting something like it. Story was never the focus. I think even the final line Doyle says is a bit of out of place.
You don't understand. They sent me. They're always watching.
I even managed to find the dummy voice line created by one of the game devs. He's clearly so self-aware of how stupid the line is.
Well, this wasn't in your plans, was it, Doyle? No, please, you don't understand. They sent me. They're all watching. You can't change this. Probably not, but I can take care of this once and for all. Stupid bastard.
What it entails is like, it's suddenly a bigger fish. Everything's actually corrupt. Maybe it was meant for some kind of sequel to this storyline. I mean, Jack did help Doyle successfully upload the PDA data, meaning whoever he sold it to got it. If only this game actually had a sequel. Wait a minute. Far Cry 1 never really had a true sequel that is directly related. Instead, the second game featuring the Jackal was speculated to be Jack Carver, and then later confirmed by one of the writers. He's also briefly referenced by Herc in Far Cry 4.
Blood, man. I got tattoos for me and Jason, me and Jack, and I'm saving my back.
But who knows, maybe Jack became Troy in Heavy Rain.
Sorry, Dal, but I really wanted to see ya. What do you want, asshole?
Hello?
Some people don't like to consider this Far Cry as part of the series, and instead view it as a build-up to the Crysis series. One major reason is the shift in development teams. I can't believe I haven't mentioned this yet, but the first Far Cry was developed by Crytek, with their signature engine, CryEngine. Their publisher was Ubisoft. Ubisoft then took control of the series, and Crytek went on to make their own things. Thus, all entries past the first are made in the Dunia engine. But I still find it worthwhile comparing the later entries in Far Cry to this one, as it still gives some good insight into how the modern game industry has failed in aspects that were clearly successful almost 20 years ago. Also, how most games now fall into making a successful template and then just copy-pasting new ones. They just don't really innovate. Like, you can take a look at Far Cry 1, Far Cry 2, and Far Cry 3, and you will see insane amount of differences between these three titles. But after the third one, Ubisoft has taken the safe route and started reusing a formula. This formula includes open world, claim outposts, start a resistance, skill points, villain monologues, that sort of thing basically. I can still respect that they do try new things in their spin-offs, yet these spin-offs usually come out flawed in some capacity, and still haven't led to anything interesting happening in the main series. Far Cry 6 is still milking off the successful Far Cry 3. Now, I could get into the subject of how lack of innovation is sometimes boring and sad, but it's not super relevant, I feel. And also, if the formula is fun and works, why change it drastically? In other words, it's just not a huge issue for me. Instead, I noticed something else when I was playing through Far Cry 5 specifically, and how its vision and style is complete chaos. The prologue of Far Cry 5 is actually insanely good. It's eerie to say the least. It's almost horror-esque in its atmosphere, and it kind of reminded me of Outlast 2 to some degree.
They've come to take me away from you. We knew this moment would come. Go. God will not let them take me.
Sometimes the best thing to do is to walk away.
You are stuck with a bunch of crazy cultists in this great valley of Northern America. So now ask yourself, what tone is Far Cry 5? Dark and serious? Casual? Satirical? This is where the game really falls apart. Like back when I talked about how the first game had a heroic survival adventure action feel to it, which I felt was pretty consistent throughout playing, Far Cry 5 struggles with its identity. Story-wise, especially through its cutscenes, and its tone wants to tell me I'm stuck in the valley with a bunch of dangerous cultists. Gameplay, however, tells me I can do whatever. Fly a plane, blow up an outpost, easy peasy. This is not even considering the amount of companions you have. There's an incredible amount of allies you attain throughout the game, as well as just random NPCs that help you. So much so you don't even feel like an underdog, instead just taking part of a silly war. For example, I managed to find the Hope County Resistance doing some training on these dummy targets, whilst only about 200 meters away there's an enemy outpost. There's also then a plane flying by, making it even funnier. There's plenty of this in the 5th title. So I hope you know what type of point I'm trying to make here. The survival genre is just not here anymore. The narrative is basically contradicting what the gameplay offers. There's another video I really enjoy that sort of supports my opinion on this, called Far Cry 5 and the Art of Saying Nothing, by the Aaron Signal.
Nothing says Far Cry 5 more to me than this scene that involves 3 campers next to 2 dead bodies, presumably killed by them. There's a dancing couple and another seated playing music, and the couple have military-grade rifles slung over their backs and wear t-shirts with American flag patterns, one of which is a skull. This scene, with its dissonant images of peace and violence, death and life, mundanity and murder, would surely be a piece of parody in any other context.
My girl, don't you lie to me? Tell me where.
I'd also argue that its gameplay is less punishing than Far Cry 1 and also Far Cry 2, which I think is also a step away from Far Cry's core idea, as now it's just another generic power fantasy. Go in, don't think, and shoot the bad guys. That's actually a really big reason why I love Far Cry 3 so much, because that game is also not that punishing, but still really feels like a Far Cry game. It sticks to the Far Cry series theme of isolation and survival, but at the same time manages to make the gameplay a lot easier without ruining the tone, instead actually enhancing it. This was simply done by having the main protagonist go down the rabbit hole of madness to become a bloodthirsty killer.
I want to clarify that I don't find it important that every game needs to be some deep metaphor for some philosophical bullshit, right? It's alright to have a game where you just turn your brain off. I do, however, find it flawed when Far Cry 5 presents itself as something a bit more deeper. There's gotta be a disconnect within the developer studio. Maybe a writer had something more serious in mind, whilst the game director might have just wanted it to be a goofy game. If Far Cry 5 had doubled down on either its parody or its serious side, I think the game could have reached so much more potential. But right now it feels like it's trying to do both, and it comes off as messy. That's at least why I appreciate Far Cry 1 for remaining consistent, even though its writing is way lower quality. I really hope though what Far Cry 5 was meant to be is not something Ubisoft made deliberately. Because it could be that Ubisoft's marketing team is doing all it can to attract as many people as possible to the game, and thus on purpose creates this inconsistency in writing, tone, and gameplay. It's a jack of all trades, but a master of none. It's slightly good, it's forgettable. It's everybody's game, and it's nobody's game. Back to the first game in the series, which I know is also worthy of critique. Even if you watch this video and never played it, but now have an interest in doing so, there's a chance that the game is still gonna be tedious to play. Maybe you'll hate how punishing stealth can feel, find Trigens boring to fight, a need for a better story, need for better graphics, or just outright hate the fact that you can't run and gun. What I'm getting to is that maybe the first Far Cry is just not for everybody, and that's fine.
I appreciate now how it caters to a specific audience, and I hope now that anybody watching this video understands my perspective on why I love the game. I still feel that it aged really well for me, and I had a blast playing it, hence why I wanted to dig very deep into all my thoughts behind the game. If anything, one of my biggest wishes for a video game would be to have something similar in style but bigger and modern. However, a big part of me does wonder if it's actually just rose-tinted glasses I'm wearing, and no matter how much I try to be rational in my retrospective, maybe I'm in actuality doing mental gymnastics to defend flawed mechanics and design decisions. There are some really amazing games that are still to this day adored worldwide released in the same year. I'm aware there's quite a few reviews of this game that fall slightly more on the negative side. When I was playing and analyzing the game, I noticed how almost every single aspect in its presentation is something I love. Jungle Isles, secret labs with sci-fi guards, action hero quotes.
I'm done. I'm not even getting paid for this crap.
And as already mentioned, the helicopters themselves are so cool. The gun sounds are just excellent in my opinion. There's just something about Far Cry 1's aesthetics and presentation that I completely fall in love with every time I play. Even though it's kind of ugly in some aspects, such as the voice acting, I adore it.
Yes, yes sir! I'm heading out!
It's just so entertaining to hear them talk. You could say it's cheesy, but I like cheese, so... The whole thing that they have mutants in the game makes it stick out for me so much, too. It's not often you find a game that tries to hide it that much as well. But it made me think, how much did Far Cry actually affect my interest from kid to adult? Perhaps it's not me liking the game for featuring these aspects, but the game gave me the interest in them from the beginning. Nostalgia is a hard thing to ignore when reviewing something, even more so if parts of what you like in general were shaped by the work you're reviewing. Nonetheless, I was really happy when, at least for me, a lot of it clicked well. It only took me about 20 years to finally beat the game. So with that, if I had to describe it all in a singular cheesy sentence, even if it's a Far Cry for some, it's home for me. Alright, so I know how I said this game is not for everybody. I actually lied. Far Cry 1's multiplayer, everybody should play it, it's too fucking good. It can run on any computer too, that's the best part. I felt like I had to cover the multiplayer and I did not know where to include it in the video, so it has to appear here now instead. I just had some real fun moments playing it. It's a very tense game mode. You didn't see me. Get the fuck away from me. Oh! Who fucking threw that nade? Oh no!
What, you died? Fuck!
Oh, am I alive? Actually.
Come on, come out. Fuck, I have no ammo.
You have no health! I can hear the both of you, it's so scary! Because I got no stamina, no ammo, no health, no grenades. Ah!
Hello.
Oh shit! Oh fuck!
I gotta get ammo.
No! Oh my god! How am I alive? How the fuck am I alive? And the jankiness of the game results in some very fun shenanigans.
Did you just jump into the water, you filthy cunt?
That's right next to you. Lay down against the sniper.
Yo, look behind you.
Honestly, it's really refreshing to have a multiplayer where you don't really care about the score, you don't really care about KD, there's no rank or anything, it's just party game level of fun, you know?
You only use the pistol? What's up with that?
I am McCree.
Well, I'm gonna go ninja on your ass.
Yeah, I can't compete with the pistol.
She's behind you, bro.
Okay. That grenade took like 5 minutes to explode.
Yay!
Get wrecked. Get. Ouch.
Get wrecked.
Fuck
Get
me. Fuck me. Of course, some of you may be aware that the multiplayer servers were actually shut down by Ubisoft some while ago. Luckily, some modders have resurrected this great game mode, trying to keep the original multiplayer as is, but also adding some nice features like custom map downloading, custom crosshairs, better view model, great server admin tools, etc. It's actually still amazing to me that there's an active multiplayer community, although really, really small. They're really helpful in the Discord as well about setting up servers, so shout out to them. I briefly mentioned custom maps, which is something that's always been a part of Far Cry 1, especially its multiplayer. Far Cry 2 also had a strong map-making community, and I was personally really involved in creating maps for that game back in the day. I just never shared them. But to focus on the first game, it's so cool to still see some maps that were made back in 2005 by some random guy available. I hope they're aware that they're still bringing a lot of joy to this day through their creations. Some of these custom maps are really amateur and abstract, but I find it very, very charming. Two of these that stick out to me is MP Skydive as well as MP Cubicles. Skydive is just really surreal to me. It's not well designed whatsoever, but the way it looks just makes me smile every time. Cubicles, on the other hand, is just very, very fun, especially if you're only like 2 players playing. You practically only have what you spawn with, the pistol and the machete, and it's constant chaos because you're only in this one room. I should point out that Far Cry did try to invent another game mode that's not just free-for-all. It's kinda like attack defense in Team Fortress 2. Attackers basically have to touch a flag to start a 4-second timer. If defenders don't touch the flag to stop the timer, then the attackers capture the flag and they move on to the next area. And there's 3 flags, so thus 3 areas. What was really innovative in this game mode is that not only is there classes to pick from, but one of them, called the Engineer, can actually build defenses. They can only build at predetermined locations though that the level offers. Still, it's an interesting game mode, and I recall playing it a lot back in my youth. Oh wait, that's the... For a long time, I thought I was alone in remembering my love for this game. There's so many cool videos out there talking about all the other Far Cry titles, but I feel like the original one remains forgotten. Now, seeing that there's still people like you and me playing and even creating new content for the game truly amazed me. Sure, it's not that many actively, but I believe now there are tons out there that remember and love this game. I hope with this long, stupid retrospective video I made will, to at least some degree, reflect a lot of the care still existing for this game. That it's not forgotten into the void of old games. So, if you've actually taken the time to watch through this entire thing, thank you for watching. It really means a lot. Ah, finally. This is my first review ever, actually. My first quote-unquote serious video, if you want to call it that. And it was a lot of fun to make. However, it took me more than half a year to do it, so I have no fucking clue how some of these channels managed to make, like 9-hour-long retrospectives on Skyrim. It doesn't make any sense. But at least it's finally completed now. I'm still worried that the video is not gonna be that good. The amount of times I've gone back and redid a small segment, I've stopped counting on how many times I've done that. But I at least hope that some of the small details I've added do pay off in the end. I mean, I really wanted it to not feel rushed. Even if it's just one little video about one little game out there. I hope it will provide some benefit to the greater circle of content. Maybe. On the small off chance that someone did enjoy this a lot and want more, then do comment that or just give me a follow and I'll try to make more. I'm gonna go to bed now. Good night.
Jack, let's get the hell off this island. How does Hawaii sound?
Sounds perfect. Never said no to a lay.